Just tell me what you're going to start with, because I need to be ready for this.
I'm going to start with greetings, programs, and welcome to the Awesome Friday podcast. This week we're covering two movies, as we usually do. My name is Matthew. With me, as always, is Simon. How are you today,
Hello, Hello. I'm okay, thank you. It's been a busy Saturday. I've had a really busy week, both in work and socially. I say socially, like what counts as a social life these days, including you coming over with your lovely wife for dinner.
I know, right?
That was very nice. And then we had
Seeing
someone else
people
for
in
dinner.
person, such a novelty.
Well, it's so nice. Not just that, but also we moved in November, and having much more space, not just to have friends over, but to find a space where my children can go and pack them away in it so they don't disturb us. That's particularly cool. Like, it's a big upgrade from a one bedroom den apartment on the downtown east side, where everyone's just living on top of each other. So that's nice. That was really nice seeing you and Dan. And last night we had some other friends over, and it was nice. It was really nice to see them. Alcohol helps. I don't know if I ever give up alcohol, it's going to have a direct impact on how social I'm able to be, because I'm not a social person. I'm very socially awkward, and alcohol really helps with that. So I don't know. This has never bothered you, of course, because you've never had that issue. But I don't know if I ever stopped drinking, if how I would solve that. Do you have any suggestions?
Yeah, just do what I do and what I've always done, which is just fake it. You're an actor. Put on a face and do it. That's
it's exhausting though.
Because like I'm not socially awkward. I've just been in sales my whole life, so it's I am social. I am socially awkward. Is what I'm trying to say. But I've been in sales for a long time, so I can just fake it.
You've got that thing where you can to walk into a room where you know absolutely nobody, and then bond with them talking about Transformers over a big bowl of chili. Like, that's your skill. Which was what?
Yeah, but it is exhausting though. Just for the record.
Anyway, but I'm fine. Things are fine. It's been a busy old week, but it's nice to have a weekend that isn't crazy, and the rest of my year is starting to get really busy. Particularly August is starting to get really crazy. So I'm going to enjoy this downtime even while I can.
The downtime.
Downtown. That would be a great movie with Liam Neeson. Downtown. Liam Neeson is George Downtime.
I mean, it also could be a Nicolas Cage movie. Let's not mince words here.
One of those would be good.
Someone should make a podcast where it's bad, direct to video, mid-tier action thrillers that have either Nicolas Cage or Liam Neeson in a leading role and Guy Pearce in a supporting role, because I'm pretty sure there's a fairly high number of those.
Well, I have suggested to you, now we know the terrible truth about Bruce Willis and the last 2 years of his acting career, like doing 20, how many movies? 21, 20 something movies in 2 years. And I did challenge you at one point to watch all of them and to write about all of them. And like this period where he decided, okay, I need to make bank. I don't care what I do. In fact, sometimes I won't even know what I'll be doing, but I'm going to do it. Like, you should watch all of those.
No, I don't think I'm going to do that.
There was a time you would have done that.
I mean, part of me wants to do that, but that just seems like a lot.
It is a lot. It's very sad as well. The whole thing is very sad.
Let's just see. I'm just looking up to see here. Films. He had in 2021. He had 7 films come out.
That's insane.
2019 and 2020 together, he had 8. To be fair, some of those in 2021 were probably COVID delayed, and at least one of them I know was supposed to be theatrical and went direct to video instead. But then 2022, 7. 8, 9, 10, 11 films coming out or have come out in 2022 so far. So that's 19,
Wow,
18 in 2 years.
that's even for a
21.
healthy young actor, that would be a lot. Even
Yeah, it's
for
like
Jared.
27 movies since 2019. And I mean, things film over long periods of time and things go through
Mhm.
long periods of post production and all that kind of stuff. But so I'm sure the shooting period was longer.
Mhm.
However, uh, that's a lot of movies. That's a lot of movies. It's interesting looking at his filmography too, because on at least on Wikipedia, it sort of there's always a note, and the frequency of the words direct to video starts going up right around the end of the year 2014, 2015. That's sort of when I think he was diagnosed
Right.
officially, and yeah, there's a absolute fuck ton of direct to video releases after that point. It's basically all direct to video after that point. That's upsetting.
I believe his maximum number of days on set was 3. I knew before um, his condition came out. I was speaking to someone who had worked on a film with him, and they basically were saying that his setup now is that he'll fly out for 3 days and he'll get 1.5 million for working like 4 hours a day. And at the time, we were laughing like, okay, well, this is the choices he's made now. That's fine when you're at his position, but now, in hindsight, it all comes into focus a bit, doesn't it? So it's very sad, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine. Aphasia is not a thing that anyone would want to you'd want to wish on anyone.
Mm,
But someone who makes their living communicating, it must be devastating.
yeah, yeah. When your whole tool for doing that is being removed, it's terrible.
Well,
But anyway, this
that's.
kind of connects to what we're going to be
Uh,
talking about today. Because
I was
what
going to say
films?
that's actually a decent segue into
Yeah.
the movie we're about to talk about in many ways. Uh, we're going to start with we have two movies to cover this week, and we're going to start with the brand new Liam Neeson action thriller Memory, which is in theaters as of this weekend,
Mhm.
which we've both now seen. And the setup for this film is that Liam Neeson is an aging hitman, and he's developing amnesia. And he is contracted to kill someone who he refuses to kill because they're basically our child. And then he decides to, uh, you know, go and kill all the people who told him to kill a child,
Whilst having,
whilst having amnesia and battling with moments of, where you can't remember and he's forgotten what he's doing or where he is and why. And
mhm,
yeah, it's actually, as premises go, it's a hell of a premise. I haven't seen it, but this is a remake of a Belgian film, I believe, which I think is just it's called something kind of dramatic, like the Alzheimer's Affair. It's got like 3 or 4 titles depending what market you're in.
right.
Um, yeah, the Alzheimer Case, or the Alzheimer Affair, or
Wow.
the Memory of a Killer is another
Oh
title that it
no,
went by.
that's much better.
Or in the original Dutch, Die Ziek Alzheimer. I'm butchering that.
Yeah, yeah. Dutch
I
pronunciation,
actually,
a hell of a thing.
yeah, I actually don't know what sound a double A makes in Dutch, so I probably shouldn't have even tried. Anyway, um, this movie is not great, but it has Liam Neeson, it has Guy Pearce, it has Monica Bellucci, it has Ray Stevenson. So it's not 100% bad, but I don't know, it's not good. I really don't know what to say about this movie. If you have been following the career of Mr. Neeson lately, in his also sad, for many reasons, onslaught of, you know, direct to video and quickly produced action thrillers in the past decade or so, basically since Taken. And, he's been doing them to keep busy. So, like, I know originally, I remember reading an interview with him where he basically said, I just want to keep busy because it keeps me from being sad because his wife died tragically. And, but he's still doing them. And this movie is a hell of a wasted premise because it is not good. I don't know, Simon. You take it away. Will you tell me what you think of this film? I think that it is frustrating, is the word I would use, because all the pieces are there for this to be a good movie.
So you've
And
got,
I think
yeah.
pretty much literally everyone phones it in. That's not true. Not everyone phones it in, but everyone who shouldn't be phoning it in is phoning it in. There's a lot of really dodgy accents because it's a movie set in Texas, and literally everyone in the movie is from a place with a British accent of some kind. um, and I mean, there's a couple of halfway decent action sequences. They're like okay, they're not amazing, but they're okay. And Martin Campbell is a director who's directed a lot of films that I really like. Lots, especially he may have peaked in the '90s, but he's responsible for GoldenEye and Casino Royale, which are widely regarded as being, certainly the best Pierce Brosnan James Bond, and top two of certainly top two of Daniel Craig's run. He did The Mask of Zorro. He did No Escape. Um, Dude's directed a lot of good movies, but this isn't one of them. I'm frustrated because, like I say, all the pieces are there for it to be good, and it's not.
Yeah,
So
I don't really disagree with any of that. The most it's a total waste of time watching this movie because the the things that it wants to do, everything, there are so many pieces crammed into this movie that all of them would make a really interesting, quite gritty police procedural if Michael Mann were to have a run at it. But the problem is that the script is not up to it and the direction's not up to it. Like the script in particular, which is I think should share most of the blame, is the most bland piece of like shit script you could imagine. There's no nuance to it at all. There's no learning anything from conversation. People literally just state their life stories. At one point, one woman just announces her life story to a guy helping her out of a pool. And honestly, the whole film is just, this is exactly what I'm saying. This is exactly what's going to happen next. There's no skill or nuance to the script whatsoever. And so when you've got a director like Martin Campbell, who I feel I have mixed feelings about Casino Royale as a film. I really like GoldenEye. Zorro is fun. I think if he's got a clear enough script, he's okay. But the it's this film's such a mess of story beats and characters that it completely fails to differentiate. There's multiple times in this movie where I was like, right, who's that? And why are they talking to her? Why is Monica Bellucci now got a monologue about prolonging life and the ethics behind that? Like it bounces all over the place. And in the middle of that, you've got some very interesting American accents that go for a little journey. They have a little vacation to take her around. So, and honestly, you're right. Since I think Taken showed Liam Neeson that there was a niche for old man action that he could fill pretty well by looking gruff. And he has been through tremendous heartbreak. And fair dues to him, he's now just making bank while he can by doing this thing over and over and over. And there's one point in this movie where he's not being gruff. He greets what is meant to be like his old friend. Spoiler, he turns out to not be. But he greets his old friend and he's got his arm around him and trying to look like he's happy, but he's smiling with the lower part of his mouth. Like there's no smile. And do you know the point I mean where he goes to see his daughter's on the friend's daughter is on the
yeah, I
horse and he
know.
goes and he's
Yeah,
there with this
you're
big
talking about.
big smile.
He has a big
I
grin on his face, but the rest of his face isn't smiling. His eyes
That's
aren't
right.
smiling. His body
That-
language isn't smiling.
He's just
His it's just a big shit-eating grin, and he's
yeah,
like, "I am happy. I am
yeah.
happy to see my
This
friend."
is this is me being happy, and I've talked to you a little bit about this morning when I was walking my dog. Like there was a time when Liam Neeson was very highly regarded, and it's a conversation for a different time about what makes good acting. Is it okay for an actor just to treat it like a job and just to like quote unquote phone it in? But there is no like connection to anything he's doing past the gruff kind of action hero. But the whole film is like that. It is so there are so many missed opportunities for actual conversation and for nuance, and there's some really good ideas that would have been really interesting with a better director and a better script and maybe a better cast. Although I thought Guy Pearce did well with what he was given. I like him a lot as an actor, and I think he was probably the best of the bunch.
Yeah,
But
I would agree with that. I think, and also he has a jaunty mustache and greasy hair, and
that's,
I feel like one of those two things was a mistake. Um, the latter one, in case it's not clear. I also there's a young woman in it called Taj Atwal. She's a British actress, and I thought she was good, but she was kind of let down by the fact that you could. I mean, I felt anyway like she was really struggling with an American accent, and then there's a
mm,
couple of points where I'm pretty convinced that they ADR'd her dialogue. Like
mm,
she performed it on the day, and they then dubbed it over later with a better take of the
yeah,
audio.
yeah,
Um, and even Ray Stevenson, who's normally like Ray Stevenson's American accent is generally actually pretty good. Um, but he's playing like a gruff, huge Texan man, and his accent definitely goes from like Texas to Louisiana to London to Texas again in one sentence at one point. It's uh it's kind of impressive. And I don't
well,
really get it. I think it's one of those things where everyone signs on to do, and this is entirely a guess on my part. I have no inside knowledge of any of this stuff ever, but it feels like it's one of those movies where or a situation where everyone says, "Yeah, like look at all these people in the movie. Let's sign on to do the movie. The script looks pretty okay," and then they get on set and they just go, maybe not."
yeah,
Like, and they all do the best they can with not great material or maybe even not great circumstances. I don't know exactly when this was shot. It might have been during COVID, which, um, might have also had an impact on everything.
yeah. But everything,
I know it was shot in Europe. Like, it's not American made, even though it's set in Texas. I think it was
yeah, I
shot in
was
like
wondering.
Bulgaria or something.
Oh, really? That would
Yeah,
make sense.
Bulgaria. Uh, and yeah, it was announced in February 2020, so it shot in 2021. So
Right.
I mean, COVID has an impact. It's I don't know. Again, it's very frustrating. It's a very frustrating movie because I mean, I'm just going to repeat myself again because all the pieces are there. All the pieces you
Yeah.
need to make a good movie are there. And with a script that maybe had another pass and a couple of more takes on some of the scenes, it might have been good even. Might have
Yeah,
been
no, absolutely.
really fun.
And also the whole concept of the killer who has Alzheimer's, so is losing his memory. Super interesting idea. That whole thing of him forgetting stuff is only really used as a single plot point right towards the end. For most of the movie, the fact that he had uh, Alzheimer's related amnesia is completely irrelevant to anything for the most part. There's only one part at the end where he can't remember the thing. Every other part of the movie, he's totally fine, and there's no real.
Yeah,
It, it's
there's one moment
introduced,
at the
but
beginning.
yeah,
There's one moment at the beginning where he misremembers something,
mm,
but it doesn't have any effect on what's going on. And
yeah.
then there's another moment where he forgets something, but it sets up a convenience to put him into a place.
Do you know what? As well, are we? Can we spoil? Can I spoil a little bit? I'm not going to spoil it. I'll do it as thinly as I can. But there's one moment where someone who he refuses to kill ends up being killed, and he wakes up from a nightmare of being covered in blood. How much more interesting would it have been if he wasn't sure if he did it or not, and we as the audience, we're not sure either. So we know straight away that he didn't do it, but
Yeah, and
how
there's
they could have
about
played the
30
amnesia
seconds where
aspect
that
a bit more.
yeah, there's about 30 seconds where that's the case, and then it gets resolved immediately. And
Yeah,
that's
yeah, yeah,
sort of the problem with the script, right? Is that every scene
yeah,
resolves
totally.
itself immediately.
Yeah, there's what's the Harrison Ford movie? Is it Presumed Innocent? Where there's the audience is on his side for the whole thing, and the video is being decoded, and then you realize at the end we've been wrong the whole time, like, or you've kind of not been either side of the fence at least. They had so much scope to play with that, and it was just completely resolved. It wasn't him, and
Yeah, I mean
so that would have been interesting.
it could have been. I mean, another great example of that would be like Primal Fear, which if you haven't seen Primal Fear, I'm going to spoil it, but
Mm,
that movie's like 20 years old, so you should have seen it by
that's
now.
great. Oh, you
But
should
where like you
definitely watch
spend
that.
it's Edward Norton's debut, and you spend the whole movie thinking that he's this put upon choir boy who has an alternate personality, who's a psychopath, and then at the end when it reveals that it's actually the other way around, is
Hmm. Yeah,
a devastating moment of acting from him,
yeah.
and then also from Richard Gere, um, and a super interesting resolution to that story.
Mm,
You should see Primal Fear, everyone, just in case you
yeah.
haven't. It's by interestingly, in a career full of great performances, it's probably still, as his debut, my favorite Edward Norton performance.
Oh, I would probably go with American History X over that. I mean, for personally, and Fight Club. I love Fight Club, but American History X, he is it, just next level for me. I do love Primal Fear though. I thought it's fantastic. But that's the thing. These movies like Presumed Innocent and Primal Fear, they involve the audience with a clever script and make us part of the story. And there was so much scope for that to happen here, and they just didn't use any of it. And that for me is the whole movie. Like the direction was very, very basic and very, very bland. I don't know if he was like constrained by budget or time, or even like if he cared about what he was doing. The script is really basic and bland, and so everyone kind of just phones it in their terrible American accents. And by the end of it, I just felt like I'd wasted an hour and 50 minutes, just completely wasted. I don't think it helps actually that the other film we're talking about this week is so brilliantly written and involving and creative that I think that probably didn't help with me watching this movie because it's none of those
Yeah, I mean
things whatsoever.
it is unfair that we are going to talk about what is easily one of the best movies of the year on the same week as this totally bland, middle of the road, probably should have been
Mm.
direct to video thriller.
Yeah, I'm quite surprised it is getting a theatrical release. I wonder if the big names are enough to drive it.
Well, the interesting thing about Liam Neeson's career at this point is that much like I'm not like really like Bruce Willis, but certainly like Nicolas Cage, he churns out quite a few movies a year, and you know, probably one in three or one in four of them are good. And same as Nicolas Cage, that dude churns out a ton of work every year, and every year or two you get one that is absolutely incredible, and the rest are at best fine. And I feel like that is Liam Neeson's sort of thing now too. He churns out a ton of movies, and every once in a while there's a really good one, or at least a really interesting one. And unfortunately, this is not that one.
Mm.
it's just, I
What would
mean,
you? I haven't really kept up to track with his old man action movies. I haven't seen Taken's 2 or 3. Out of all the things he's pumped out, which ones would you recommend as actually fine movies that I should watch?
uh, let's see here. When was Taken? Taken was like 2008. So since then, uh, The Gray is good. That was 2012. And also, yeah, The Gray was good. I mean, obviously, 2014 he had the Lego Movie. But
Mhm.
also, I liked A Walk Among the Tombstones, which was also 2014. Run All Night was okay in 2015. It's interesting, actually. There's a common theme to some of this, but I'll come to in a second. Uh, Silence was amazing. Silence is an amazing film. He's got a very small part in it, but that's like Martin Scorsese's passion religious thing, which is the film that Andrew Garfield should have won Best Actor for in 2016. Um, The Commuter in 2018, Cold Pursuit in 2019, and then I haven't really seen. There's been 3 or 4 or 5 since then that I just haven't really caught up with.
Mhm.
But interesting, of those ones, The Commuter and also Run All Night are Jean-Claude Serra movies, who makes really good high-grade B movies. You may remember him from directing The Shallows with Blake Deadly.
Oh.
So yeah, I mean, like I say, like he turns out a ton of work, and every once in a while there's a great one. And like, not to say they're like high art or peak cinema, but they're definitely like The Commuter is a legitimately fun movie. Run All Night is a legitimately fun movie. Like
Mhm.
I don't know if you've seen The Commuter, but it's Liam Neeson
No.
on a train against bad guys. It's really fun.
I like trains. I like bottle movies, so maybe what's that one called? The Commuter.
The Commuter. Oh,
No.
there's another one too. Which one did I forget? There's another one where he's Nonstop, which is also Jean Calais Seurat.
Oh.
Nonstop, he plays an air marshal, and he's like a aging alcoholic air marshal. And there's turns out there's terrorists on his plane, and it's a locked room mystery. He has to figure out who the terrorists are, and it's from 2014. And it also features early appearances by Lupita Nyong'o and Michelle Dockery as two of the air stewardesses on the
I feel
flight.
like I've seen that.
And it's like, it's not necessarily a great movie, but it's like I say, Jean-Claude Serra has this really interesting knack for churning out super high grade B movies. So when it gets to the point where old man Neeson, the alcoholic, is losing the confidence of everyone in the plane, and he has to give an impassioned monologue about he's not the best choice for the job. He's old, he's an alcoholic, but he's all they've got, and they have to band together. Like, you're just like, yeah, man, yeah. It's sort of like I say, it's like he's done a number of very perfect B movies, and
Uh,
they're the ones that are good are definitely worth seeking out. And just to reiterate, unfortunately, this is not one of those, which is a
yeah,
little bit disappointing.
yeah, it's really not.
So, yeah, what would you give it out of five? I'm gonna give it a two based on uh, Guy Pearce's jaunty mustache.
I'm giving it a one, just for the British detective's long speech where she turns Irish in the middle. So 1 star, purely for that moment. Oh no, I'm going to give 1 star actually for the completely needless Monica Bellucci patting her cleavage moment, which was so stupid. And then
Oh
buttoning up
yeah,
her blouse, like the doctor, like was like taking her heart rate, and
yeah.
he
He
must
was
have
he
used
was
some kind of,
ultrasounding her heart for some reason.
and so she
There's this whole
wiped off the
subplot
lube.
in the
Oh,
Yeah,
it's
there's this whole subplot
terrible.
in the movie where she's
Oh,
like pursuing staying young, but it doesn't have any bearing on anything at all.
no, it doesn't make any sense, and there's so many stupid points. Anyway, 1 star from me because
Yeah,
we don't give 0 stars, so it gets a one for
yeah,
existing.
yeah. I'll still give it two because I think Guy Pearce does okay. I don't think it's fully bad, but it's
Oh,
not good.
generous man that I am.
I mean, a movie has to like offend me with its awfulness before I'll give it a one at this point. So,
Oh, I'm offended. I'm offended by what was the quote I sent you? You're obsessed. I'm just doing my job. Wow. It's that kind
yeah.
of script, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, that's very much like an existential crisis in the form of a multiversal story. So let's
It
move
really is.
on. Let's
Ooh.
move on to Everything, Everywhere, All at Once, which has been in theaters for a couple of weeks now, but we finally had a chance to sit down and watch it. And turns out it's one of the best movies of the year.
Yeah, spoilers.
And
It's
that's the end
incredible.
of the podcast. We shouldn't talk about it. You should go see it. You should see it as blind or as cold as possible, and it's legitimately one of the best movies of the year. It's the second feature from the Daniels, who you may remember from Swiss Army Man, aka the farting Daniel Radcliffe corpse movie. No, you didn't hear that wrong. If you haven't seen the movie,
You should watch it as well. There's no way a movie with that premise should work, and it doesn't just work, it works brilliantly. It's a really touching, heartfelt movie about a farting corpse.
Yeah.
And Radcliffe, God bless Radcliffe's agent. Like he could have banked it on Harry Potter for the rest of his life. But he's played farting corpse. He's played man with guns strapped to his hands, running around
Hmm.
in fluffy slippers. And I love. Have you seen Guns Akimbo? Right, he's great in that.
I haven't
So
actually
God,
seen it, but it's
have you
high on
not?
my
Oh,
list.
so
Uh,
good. So yeah, you should watch that movie.
yep. But not
So
before you watch this movie because it's so great.
mhm.
Why
Yeah,
don't you give us the rundown on the basic plot, the very
oh,
basic plot of Everything
okay.
Everywhere All at Once?
Michelle Yeoh owns and runs a laundrette in America. Do you call them
It's
laundrettes?
laundromat in American.
Laundromat. I'm afraid. Sorry, a laundromat. It's less French. Oui, dans
Yeah.
la laundrette. And she is married to her husband, played by the wonderful Kei Hui Kwan, who you'll remember as Short Round from Indiana Jones and from the Goonies as well. And I forget his character's name, but he was in the Goonies. Um, and they're married and they have a daughter played by Stephanie Shu, who's very good. And they're just they're not making much money. They're not very good at like keeping all their receipts, and it comes to tax time, and they've got to do their tax returns. And they have an accountant at the tax office played by Jamie Lee Curtis that they're trying to get all these taxes done, and they don't. There's lots of things go wrong. Michelle Yeoh is not in a happy place with her life. Her husband's not happy in their marriage. She's unhappy with her daughter because her daughter has a girlfriend, and she's at the same time trying to impress her father, who's clearly like overbearing towards her as well. So she doesn't start this movie in a very happy place. But then we learn that an interdimensional rupture has happened, and she is contacted by someone who basically tells her he thinks she is the key to fixing it. And that's really all I can tell you about this movie. One thing I will say before we get to superlative about the whole thing, there's there's not many movies these days where I would say, "Oh, that's a theatrical." You've got to see it on a big screen, because over the pandemic, I've set up a little home cinema, and I am so happy watching movies at home now. I don't. There's not many movies where I think, "Oh, that would have been better on the big screen." This is 100%. If you can get to the movies and feel safe to do so, go and watch this on the big screen, because this the when this movie kicks into gear, it is a visual trip and it takes you with it. And the more uh, enclosed you are in that bubble, the more you'll get from it. Like it's a really visually spectacular, incredible experience. Like I'm very sensitive to color, to like lights and flashing lights, and sometimes I really hate it if it's like strobe kind of light, but I just found this almost like energizing, the amount of color, and it's so beautifully shot as well, because once it kicks off, once we establish there are other dimensions, these dimensions are realized in the most incredible like otherworldly ways. Sometimes they're worlds we recognize, sometimes they're like 80s sci-fi inspired stuff, sometimes it's huge leaps that you would never even imagine, and these huge leaps get more and more. And the best thing about this whole damn film is that it's about something, and it's about something real, and it's about an emotional acceptance of kinds, and it's not just for show. Like it's got a really strong emotional core. And Michelle Yeoh, if she doesn't get nominated for an Oscar for this, then I will be flabbergasted. My flabber will be gusted. What did you? What? And that there's not much more you can say
It's a
about it
difficult
without
film.
spoiling it, right?
It's a
What do you
difficult
want
film
to
to
add?
talk about. I think it's an interesting film because there is so much detail we could speak about that would not actually affect or spoil the plot or the emotional through line of the film, but so much of that, of the detail, works so well, I think, because it's so surprising.
Mm,
When they're, the way that the multiverse is explained, which is, the way that every multiverse is explained, is that every choice creates a branching reality. And some of those branches are immediate from the timeline that we're watching, and some of them go back far enough that everyone in one universe has hot dogs for fingers. It's you know, it's, and that sounds ridiculous, and it is, but it's also really lovely, like really heartfelt, really lovely, and a lot of the multiversal stuff is used to reinforce and reiterate the themes of the film in ways that will catch you by surprise and will really work their way just into you in a way that it's a movie that I might go so far as to describe as transcendent,
mm,
um, just because of how affecting that it is. And I wouldn't normally use that word, because in a film that was less everything, basically. That's It's interesting because in the same way that there is a lot going on in, um, memory, there is a lot going on in this movie, but the main difference is that literally all of it works in this one, whereas
yeah.
basically none of it works in the former.
Yeah.
um like there is no single shot, there is no single line of dialogue, there is no single meaningful glance between characters that is not important to the plot, important to the theme, and important to the experience of watching the film. And I think it's very early in the year yet, and this already, it's the best thing I've seen all year, and it has I think it probably has a very high chance of being my favorite thing of the year. I haven't given anything else as high rating as I've given this year.
I mean, there's always Top Gun for you, isn't there? But for me, it's the best film I've seen in years, years and years and years. Like in terms of spectacle and creativity, and you make a really good point that a movie like this is quite hard to stick the landing. And when you're trying to be this creative, it's quite easy to slip into being pretentious and like trying to obfuscate in to sort of hide meaning in an attempt to be deep. Do you know what I mean? It's to be too complicated, and I'm just staggered at this movie. Doesn't drop off at the end. It doesn't find its feet at the beginning and then get kind of normal towards the end. Like that creativity and the way it plays with different dimensions and the characters in those dimensions and how they interact with each other, it just goes up and up and up, like in terms of engagement and creativity. And just when you think you've seen it at its peak, it then takes another breath and says, okay, okay. It turns into Al Pacino for some reason. It takes a breath and goes into a next level. And so by the end of this, it's just like a song. I mean, I talk a lot about music and good films. It is a beautiful song, and it has a crescendo, and that crescendo is meaningful, but also it's not overwhelming with noise. Like the last part of this movie is quite quiet. You know, it's
Hmm.
fairly quiet, and it works brilliantly. In fact, there's a moment of absolute silence that is, and when you realize, and it comes after a very big crescendo, and there's a jump cut, and it is just like, fuck, this is just like, it's so confident in its creativity. It's
Yeah,
fantastic.
and I think what really makes it work. I'm sort of going to repeat myself a little bit, but what really makes it work is that the key, the other key difference between these two movies that we're talking about, other than that, like everything works in this one and everything doesn't in the other, is that every single choice in this movie is about reinforcing its central theme, its central story. So
Mm.
there's a lot of stuff going on, but there's none of it that's not relevant. Whereas the previous movie, there's just a shit ton of stuff that's not relevant. That that would be interesting, but would also need an editor to be like, that doesn't do anything for this story.
Mm.
Whereas in Everything Everywhere All at Once, literally every choice is to reinforce the ending, basically, and the resolution of the plot and the theme of the film. And that moment you're talking about, where it's a jump cut to total silence, I had a moment where I was like, "Oh shit, somebody's gonna talk," like, because
Yeah.
we were in a not empty theater, and it's
Yeah.
exactly the kind of movie that could lose someone. Like, a lesser film would have lost someone,
Hmm.
and someone would have been like, "What the fuck is happening right now?" But
Hmm.
this movie had the whole audience stupefied in
Mm.
the best way possible, and that moment is a very interesting
Mm.
release. And also, some that scene also pays off itself a little bit later in the film in just a really wonderful way,
Mm.
that I don't like, just can't spoil.
You can't.
Anyway, that like this is, I think that the Daniels are have cemented themselves as a very interesting filmmaking duo. They are two for two. This is the superior
Hmm.
film, but neither of their films are bad.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're both legitimately great, but this is by far, I think, the best film I've seen all year.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's
It's
the
worth
best film I've seen in years, but it is definitely the best film of
right.
2022 so far.
Like for me, the last film that made me feel like this, like so complete and overwhelmed as a film spectacle, was Mad Max Fury Road. Like it's in 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 terms of the medium being used in this way,
Yeah, I mean,
it
yeah,
blows everything else for
especially
me.
in terms of like the raw visual spectacle. Yeah, you're probably right.
Yeah.
That, or maybe, and actually a film that it has some DNA in common with, maybe actually Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse.
Mhm. Mhm.
Another one where just the raw creativity on display and the raw spectacle of how that is portrayed
Mhm.
is wonderfully overwhelming,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. That's
never
great.
but never to the point where you lose it. It's just that, like, it sort of completely takes you over. You sort of live in the experience, live in the moment, which is quite nice, I thought.
Yeah.
It's,
It's worth mentioning it as well. I've already mentioned it, but the emotional impact at the end of this movie is a testament to Michelle Yeoh and Stephanie Shu playing off against each other as mother and daughter, and they they really, what I got from it, being a white guy from England, was this, it really moved me. But I can't even imagine being like of Asian heritage, being watching that movie. Like there's so many kids who have gone through overbearing parents who have not made like partner choices that are approved by the parents, and just to see this movie goes really deep into that kind of approval and forgiveness and generational trauma. And there's going to be a hell of a release for some people that watch this movie,
mhm.
and that's not my life at all. And by the end of it, I just was really moved by the whole thing. So it reminded me a lot, actually, of Turning Red. Of the message is quite similar in terms of uh, an Asian daughter, um, generationally born outside of the country that their parents are from, and moving outside of their parents' expected traditions and expectations, and it was similarly moving. So they're both fantastic. Everyone's fantastic in this movie, but for multiple reasons I won't go into, both the female leads have multiple versions of their characters to kind of portray and work through, and it's just done so brilliantly. And they're so The emotion is so real as well, even when everything is so surreal. Like this is a movie where people suddenly have hot dogs for hands, and it's incredibly moving. Like what the?
Yeah.
How have they done that? How is that possible? And it's like Swiss Army Man. Like the Daniels have managed to find this very thin line between uh, ridiculous and stupid. Like
Hmm.
it's not played for laughs; it's played for emotion. It's played straight, absolute surreal ridiculousness played straight, and it works. Like they are so talented. And this is before we even get into their like technical skills. Like the way this thing is shot and edited and scripted, it's
It'll be,
incredible.
on the one hand, it'll be like it's. I think it's too early in the year to make calls about acting nominations or awards, but this will be the movie where if it doesn't win for editing, if it doesn't win every award for editing, I might lose faith
Mhm.
in the industry.
What
um,
faith you have left?
and you're talking. I mean, nothing you've said about Michelle Yeoh or Stephanie Su is wrong, but Kei Hui Kwan is so
Yeah.
wonderful
Oh, he really
as the
is.
dad in this, and it's just such a like. First off, he has to also portray at least. I mean, one, two, at
Mm,
least three separate versions of the same character,
yeah.
all of which are wonderful, and one of which is kind of emotionally devastating,
Mm,
but in like a really nice way. Like, again, really overwhelming way. He has a lovely monologue where he basically outlines his own character's through line, and it's just like brought me to tears.
mm.
Um, and then there's also James Hong who plays the grandfather Gong Gong, who, and like if you don't know who James Hong is, you're not paying attention because that guy is 90 years old. He's been acting for roughly 70 of those years in Hollywood, and he's only just getting his walk on the Hollywood Star Frame Walk of Fame like this year, like this month. Um,
Mm.
but going back to Kei Kwan for a moment, he had a pretty successful career as a young man acting, and then he stopped finding roles in the 90s, transitioned to production work, and this is his return to acting after 22 years.
Wow, what was he doing in production? What kind of thing?
He, hang on a second, I can just tell you, he transitioned to, I mean, being a producer, as far as I understand. He went to, I know that in the year 2000, he went to help choreograph and work on fight sequences in X-Men. And from that point on,
Ah,
basically, he worked as a stunt coordinator, a stunt choreographer, assistant director on a number of films, and a lot of them you've seen. Um,
mhm.
and he returned to acting for this after
Yeah.
this and another film I think that you've seen, but I haven't, on Netflix, called Finding Ohana, um,
Mm. Oh
which is a
yeah.
kids
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's his first film. Sorry, in 20 years. His last film was a movie called Second Time Around in 2002,
And
and it's just
he's so
you just
good
gotta
as well.
you just gotta wonder like how many amazing performances we must have missed out on just
Yeah.
because Hollywood's kind of racist. Like
Yeah.
there just wasn't roles for Asian American actors, and so he stopped acting. And it's interesting that he said in an interview that he was inspired to return to acting by Crazy Rich Asians, of all things, because he felt it was the first time he watched a movie with Asians in the lead portrayed as real people
Hmm.
and not just Hollywood stereotypes of Asian people. And that's
Hmm.
what made him want to come back. And I am upset that we don't have those 20 years of him giving incredible performances, but I'm glad that he is back.
Yeah. Well, I love the video that's come out with Michelle Yeoh talking about the experience of getting this script and going for this part. And she said she doesn't take anything these days if the director's if it's not a passion project, she just won't spend 3 or 4 months away from her family anymore or uproot them all. And she said she read the script, and it's wonderful because she starts crying when she's talking about it. And she's like, finally, there's something that isn't stereotypical. There's something that can show me uh, for all the different things I can do. Like I can be funny, I can be serious, and it's really emotionally moving to see an actress of her stature just reacting to finally getting something that isn't a stereotype, you know, and and boy does she pull it off! Like she's just incredible in this film, absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
I
And
mean, I don't have
and
a bad thing to say about it at all.
I mean, Stephanie, I really hope this kicks off Stephanie Sue in a much bigger way as well. You've already seen her if you haven't seen this, but you've probably already seen her. She's one of the friends in Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. And if
Hmm.
you watch The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel on Amazon Prime, you've seen her in the last two seasons of that, in which she's also one of the best parts, I would argue.
Hmm. Hmm.
um, but I hope this kicks her career off in a major way. I really want to see more from her. She's amazing.
She was amazing,
So,
for sure.
and of course,
So how much?
I don't think we can leave out that just how much fun and how good Jamie Lee Curtis is in this as well. I
Yes.
also really enjoy that Jamie Lee Curtis is at a point in her career where she's also just clearly taking the stuff that she just finds interesting and weird,
Hmm. Hmm.
and I adore her in this as well.
Hmm. Yeah, she's fantastic in this, and again playing multiple roles within the same body and doing a great job of it. Really lovely.
Yeah, it's interesting because our tone sounds almost a little bit somber or melancholy, but it's really
Hmm.
not. Like this really like I'm not it's not hyperbole for me to say this is one of the best things I've seen. It's definitely the best thing I've seen all of this year. It's among the best things I've seen in years. And I get a little bit emotional just thinking about watching it. So it's
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have a somber ending, but there's a real emotional beat at the end of this film, and so it's hard to really talk about the whole film without talking within the context of that quite quiet ending that is so effective, and the message is so strong, and it really fits into like how life is at the moment and how many people are feeling at the moment.
yeah.
That it's incredibly moving. Please go see it in the cinema. Mask up, do what you need to do, but go see it in the cinema. You won't regret it at all.
I concur. You
How
should
many
definitely
stars,
see
Matt?
it. All of the stars.
All
Five.
of them.
Five is the maximum, so five.
Yes, me too.
Five from both of us.
This is the easiest five I think I've ever given.
Yeah.
It's tremendous. Good.
Good.
So what's coming up for the next week for you? What are you covering?
So I don't know for sure what we'll be covering on the podcast next week. But there are sorry Hot Docs, which is the sort of preeminent documentary film festival in Canada and perhaps North America, is on now. Started this past today. You'll be listening to this on a Sunday, so it would have started on Friday. I've already seen several films, and I've actually posted a video that my friend Thomas from For Real and I had about movies we're excited for, and there should be some reviews and interviews coming on the site over the next couple of weeks. Reviews over the next week and interviews over a little bit longer period because they post to the podcast feed as well. There's also a one that I'm not allowed to talk about yet that I've seen that I'll be posting hopefully an interview and a review for later this week. Um, but other than that, I actually don't know what we'll have on the docket for us for next week. So
Well, hopefully maybe something Michael Bay related. That would be good.
hopefully, I hope that we can maybe get to a cinema, and we'll be a little bit behind on this one as well. But I would like to make it to a cinema and watch The Northman as well.
Ah,
So,
yes.
um, but I'm working on it. We have options, but
Mhm.
my inbox is absolutely overwhelmed with emails about documentaries right now.
Right.
I haven't. I don't want to jinx it by saying it, but there is another film festival in June that I am quite hopeful that I've been accredited for. That'd be my second
Which
time covering it.
which one?
I don't want to say it out loud, but
Oh,
it rhymes with cry flecka out of New York. Okay. Um,
Christ.
and there's looks like the lineup for that festival has been announced, and it looks really good this year. So, but that's June. But the end of this month we have Top Gun. Next month we have. It's interesting. We're almost at the halfway point of the year. So Top Gun this month. Next month we have Jurassic Park. Sorry, Jurassic World. There's something else at the end of June as well, and then there's the new Jordan Peele in July. So we're really heading
Mhm,
into what you might call the busy season for film,
mhm,
and
mhm.
I'm looking forward to it.
Me too. Well, good. How can people give us money? Like, how do I dress it up? How
that
can
was
people
um
support
that
us?
was an amazing segue. I'm just gonna
I
say. So
I do
this
not.
Yeah, this is the point in the show where we say we want to thank everyone for listening. We have a lot of fun doing this, and we hope you have a lot of fun listening to it. And if you would like to support us, the two best ways to do that would be to subscribe on your podcasting platform of choice, or give us a 5-star review on your podcasting platform of choice, or, I mean, multiple podcasting platforms if you like. I'm not going to stop you from doing that, or both of those things. If you'd like to support us a little more directly, we do have a Patreon and a Ko-fi, and those will be linked in the show notes, and they're linked on the website, which is awesomefriday.ca. We also, we don't write this, but we do perform it here in Vancouver on the unceded lands of the Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Musqueam nations. And yeah, we want to thank you for listening. We love each and every one of you,
We
all 12
do.
of you.
And
uh,
counting.
and counting. Good. All right. Well, that's the end of the show, folks. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you for joining us on this awesome Friday.
Thanks, guys. Bye.